The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
All right, we're rolling for 3 hours today. Sunshine. Not bad. Talking about clouds today, but so far, sunshine on this Tuesday. We'll talk to Lauren Druhan at 10 o'clock. Loves college football, and she tweeted out before the playoff selection was that she thought that Florida State was going to be out. In fact, they're out, and that's caused a lot of hand-wringing about this. I only heard a minute or so of this, but this bleeding from Mike Greenberg about how the college football playoff has become like figure skating, that you get style points for getting in. Stop. You're in the television business. You know better, Mike. Come on. It's about having competitive games. Florida State, with their backup quarterback, was not going to be competitive. We've seen too many blowouts in these college football playoff games. And by the way, and I'll talk to Lauren more about this, the proposal to have a 12-team playoff this year, if it would have happened this year, this is what it would have looked like. In the opening round, Missouri would have played at Oregon. I don't really think Missouri would have had much of a chance there, do you? Mississippi at Ohio State, okay, maybe that's a decent game. Penn State at Georgia, you really think that Penn State's going to give Georgia a competitive game? And then Florida State would have played Liberty with the winner playing Alabama. You really want Liberty in this? You really want that? Well, that's what you're going to get next year. If there had been a 12-team playoff this year, that's what it would have looked like. So I just can't get too worked up about Florida State being left out. Happens. Things happen. This back in the day, before they had playoffs and they just had polls, one year Penn State finished up unbeaten. And Joe Paterno was squealing like a stuck pig about not being the national champion. They gave it to Texas, partly because Richard Nixon showed up at the famous game between Arkansas and declared them the national champions. Things were different in those days. Sometimes it's just not fair. And all this crying and whining, stop already. Rex is here today and told me before the show that he gave up Monday Night Football last night to watch the in-season tournament. This was the Celtics playing the Pacers, which on paper should be a mismatch, but I guess the Pacers won the game, and you said this was really good basketball?
Yeah, they were really into it.
Really?
Yeah, so far in-season tournament is a hit.
I think money means something to some players. Julius Randle the other day said, $500,000 is a lot of money. I don't care what anybody says, and we're going to try and win it for the guys that don't make as much money. I mean, for anybody, $500,000 should be a lot of money. So I don't know if that's the main motivator. You don't think so. You just think they're competitive.
I think it is that, yeah. Okay. But we'll see how long it lasts.
Yeah, well, they've got, these are the quarterfinals. So they got semifinals.
I think it'll wrap up right before Christmas.
Right before Christmas is when, and that's in Vegas, right? They play it's a Final Four circumstance.
I think so, yeah.
I think it is. Okay, well, we'll see. So you didn't watch the Monday Night Football game, and I really didn't watch much of it myself. We'll get to what Jake Browning did in just a moment, but I did see the handoff from the pregame show to Buck and Aikman in the booth. And if you've never been to the stadium at Jacksonville, I was there for the Gator Bowl in January of 2004, I believe, and the Super Bowl in 2005. And we've talked about what a disaster Jacksonville was as a Super Bowl site, but the stadium's okay. And they have a pool at this stadium. And so as they're about to make the throw from the pregame to Buck and Aikman for the game, it's Michelle Beisner standing with Robert Griffin III. Robert Griffin III wearing a brightly colored suit, as he likes to wear on these pregame shows, and he's standing next to the pool with Michelle. He is the most attention-needy person in the United States of America. As she wraps it up and says, that's it, let's send it to Buck and, Buck's her husband, Buck and Aikman for the game. I don't know whether he had taken off all of his equipment. It seemed like he actually said something before he did this. He jumped in the pool in his suit. I don't know if he thinks that's going to get him back in the NFL more quickly or at all. I don't know if he thinks it's going to make him rise up the chain and at ESPN. But it was just pathetic. It was just absolutely pathetic to see him jump in the pool. And here's the dilemma that he's got to face in being an analyst. Who does he want to be? Does he want to be a Chris Collinsworth type of analyst who can actually watch tape and analyze it? And he can do that. He's done that as well in pregame and doing games, college football games on TV. Or does he want to be the Gronk lovable lunkhead who jumps into the pool? You can't really be both. You can't have people take you seriously if you're going to do things like that and make a fool of yourself. I think a fool of himself. But this is where we are with Robert Griffin III, and every time he has the opportunity, he's begging for a chance to come back and play. Well, Browns didn't win last week, but Joe Flacco did okay. You know, there were some things that happened to the Browns, but all in all, you know, he wasn't a bad replacement. And here was Griffin a few weeks ago, you know, with Deshaun Watson being out for the year with shoulder surgery, begging to get a chance to quarterback the Browns. Nobody wants you. And nobody wants a guy who's making a fool of himself on TV like that. The playing days are long over. This thing about 6 or 7 years as a window to still play quarterback in the NFL, forget it. Move on and decide who you want to be. Do you want to be somebody who is taken seriously as an analyst, or do you want to be a circus clown who jumps into a pool? Take your choice. I don't think you can do both. I really don't. I don't think that there are people like that in any kind of broadcasting. You either are the clown or you're the guy that observes the clown, and you're trying to be both, and it's not working out for you. All right, I'll tell you what worked out last night, and this was a surprise because when you heard that Jake Browning was going to start for the Bengals against Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were leading the AFC South. I mean, what chance did you think they would have? Well, it did go to overtime, and Lawrence did suffer an injury, which the latest on is it's not a broken ankle. It is a sprained ankle. Now, high ankle sprain can be worse than a break. What do they have? 4 games left to go. So 5 games left to go, right? They're 8-4. So the 5 games left to go. It's possible he could miss the rest of the regular season. And the rest of the regular season may mean C.J. Beathard, the well-traveled C.J. Beathard. Yeah, he's still in the league, in case you didn't know. Came off the bench and did pretty well for them. He completed 9 of 10 passes for 63 yards and put the Jags in position for Brandon McManus's 40-yard field goal with 26 seconds left in regulation. But Browning let him down the field and sent the game to overtime, and they won it. They won it in overtime. And it's really, remarkable when you consider what's happened to all the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. The fact that Sam Howell may not have missed the snap this year were it not for what a ridiculous blowout it was Sunday at FedEx Field, and they let Jacoby Brissett hand off for a few plays. That's amazing. He has not missed a snap because of injury. And I think he even went in the tent in concussion protocol. Might have been the Denver game, but didn't miss any plays and came back out on the field. And just the attrition of quarterbacks. There have been now, and we still have, for some teams, 5 games left to play, there have been 70 different quarterbacks who have thrown a pass this year. 70. That's over 2 per team. That's hard to get your head around, but that's the reality of it. Some of it's related to blowouts and, backups come in, but a lot of it is starting quarterbacks going down. And I hope Trevor Lawrence makes it back. I hope it is just a sprain and not a break. I hope he gets back onto the field. But the number of big-name quarterbacks not playing because of injury, and some of them, are out for the rest of the year, it's I've said this a number of times. We're going to have a Super Bowl where the 2 teams have street free agents starting at quarterback that they've had to go through. Cleveland's had to go through 4 quarterbacks this year. You may reach the point, where a guy like Joe Flacco is starting a Super Bowl, a guy who you had to pick up in an emergency and takes your team to the Super Bowl. And they've done everything they can, it seems, to protect the quarterbacks. They've done what they can, but the injuries still occur. And what happened to Trevor Lawrence last night could happen at any time. The wash of the pass rush gets to him, and he gets his ankle stepped on. I think it was by one of his own linemen, And, yeah, keep your fingers crossed. It could be a break, but it leaves the Jaguars in a position that is very tenuous right now, even though they are still leading the AFC South. Scott Van Pelt talking to Troy Aikman and Joe Buck after last night's victory for the Bengals.
We wait to find out the details, but this could really change the way the entire remainder of the AFC goes, and it's just another in a long line of injuries this year in the NFL. I just wonder your reaction in real time to what you saw.
Well, it looks to be a serious injury based on his reaction that you pointed out there in the highlights, Scott. But, the big win last week against Houston and what that meant to them within the AFC South, and a win tonight, what that would have meant being the number 1 seed is at least where we stand right now. This loss throws all of that into a bit of a tailspin, and then you combine it with the fact that you may be without your franchise quarterback here going forward. I mean, it totally throws up in arms what might happen in the AFC South and how that might shake out within the AFC conference itself. So this was a huge night for Jacksonville and the loss. And then on top of that, the bigger part of that is whatever the future might be this year for Trevor Lawrence.
Jake Browning, though, shows what can happen, right? In his second start, he came in relief of Burrow in the game against Baltimore, started last week against Pittsburgh, and was just spectacular in this game. Joe, Troy, you both raved about him, and rightfully so. To watch the growth and confidence in time, I'm standing next to Ryan Clark on the field, Joe, and his eyes just get big. He said, man, this guy's just playing now. You literally could see the confidence grow, and it was like they won the game in part because of him, not in spite of him. And I think that's pretty remarkable given where we started this night.
Yeah, I agree with that. And when we had a chance to meet him, we ended that meeting and then went right into meetings with Anarumo and then their head coach, Zach Taylor. And I said, and Troy said, you get the sense that this guy's got something to him. Now, how it's going to play out, who knows? Even his post-game interview with Lisa Salters, he's just very calm. He's smart, you can tell. And once they took the training wheels off him, he played great. And the training wheels were on the first couple of possessions. They were able to move the ball a little bit, but every throw was around the line of scrimmage. And once Zach Taylor said, you know what? Let's let this kid play. Boy, did he play. He was impressive tonight.
Yeah, and Scott, I mean, this guy has a track record. I mean, we talked about what he accomplished in high school, what he did there at Washington. He's used to playing at a high level, and that's not always the case with some of these backups. But I do think that the way that they opened the game was by design, get the ball out quick, but was it going to continue that way? And they opened it up, as Joe said, pretty quickly there on the next possession, and I agree. I mean, he made some unbelievable throws. He really did. They won this game because of Jake Browning and the way that he played, and he was fun to watch because it's not easy to do. What he did tonight is just simply not easy to do, and any backup that you talk to or that watch this would tell you the same thing. So it was a night to remember, and hopefully for his sake, he has a lot more like him.
Well, I don't know what Troy's talking about with quarterbacks who haven't played at a high level in college or high school. You don't get to the NFL if you haven't done that. They're not picking guys off Division III very often to play in the NFL. But Browning was really good last night, 354 yards, touchdown, also ran for a score, and completed 32 out of 37. Wow, that's a night. And I don't know. Do you count the Bengals out now? Even though their quarterback Joe Burrow is out for the year, do you do that? Yeah, you might. You might count them out, but maybe not. This is now a league maybe of backups. And the fact that I think Brissett is among the highest, if not the highest paid backup in the NFL. Among journeyman guys, not like a first like Zach Wilson, and we'll get to him. Who was the second pick of the draft. But I think he's making $8 million a year this year. Haven't had to use him. Should have traded him to the Browns at the deadline. All right, let me get to the Commanders. Ron Rivera held a news conference yesterday, and there's really not much you can say at this point. They are what they are. There are 4 games left to go. Everybody in America, including Ron Rivera, knows that he's going to be fired at the end of the season. But he's got to drag this carcass along for another 5 weeks. Won't be till 5 weeks from yesterday that he will be officially out. They play either the 6th or the 7th in their final game against Dallas, and undoubtedly he'll be fired right after the game or the next day for sure. And he was asked, where they are at this point. It's a 4-8 football team with basically a lame duck coaching staff.
They're frustrated, obviously. So how do you kind of manage that?
First and foremost, make sure they all understand that they're not the only ones frustrated. Yeah. There's a lot of people out there that are working hard and trying to get better. It is difficult. It is hard. I mean, but you also have to look at the circumstances that we are in. And I'm talking about you guys. I'm talking about us as a group, as a unit. It's not been easy. It's been hard, and it's going to be hard. That's just the way it is. And eventually, if things continue to work and people get better, then you see the improvement. And we're coming up to a four-game stretch. 4 weeks left after this bye, and that's where you need to see it. You really do. And it's about going out there and executing, about us making sure we've given them every opportunity to be successful, and that's what it's truly about. I mean, you can only say so much about development and growth. You can only say so much about the process. There's a certain point in time when you get to each year and say, now's the time, let's go. I mean, the process is now, and the time is now, so let's see what we can do.
I know emotions can be high after a loss, but did you get the sense from them that they had the right mindset to really push forward and finish out the season strong?
I'd like to believe so, and that's basically what the talk was about and I told you guys that yesterday in the press conference, that's what I told the guys. We've got 4 left. I expect everybody to be a professional, show up and do their job.
Now is the time? No, now is not the time. The time was 2 months ago. It's December now, Ron. It's a dead team. You're done. And you had Antonio Gibson saying after Sunday's loss that they're going to stop talking about growth. That's ridiculous. You can't keep saying that. He says, it sounds like words now. We're not going to keep saying that at the back end of the season. It's too late for growth. I feel like we can finish off the season strong and head into next year with growth, but it's too late right now. So, yeah, talk about that, Ron, now? No, it's too late for that. This is about the conversations that he's been having with various players.
Well, I try to understand them, see where they are, and when I talk to them, if I talk to them privately, I just tell them first off the bat, you're not the only one that's frustrated. Let's be honest about this. There's a lot of people out there working their asses off. There really are. And I think that's the thing everybody's going to understand. And, it's sometimes things click and happen and go in the right direction. Sometimes if you're in this long enough, and I've said this before, if you're in this long enough, that's what happens. But again, it's one of those things that, as you continue to work, eventually it's gonna turn. I really do believe that. Like I said, we got 4 weeks to find out.
Yeah, well, I think, barring 4-0, even with 4-0, come on. If they finish 4-0, could you really see an announcement that Ron Rivera is coming back next year? No. It's done. Everybody knows it's done. It feels like it's done, and this is the point of the season. A lot of bad teams get to this, that you start looking at younger players. Now, here's an interesting thing. They did trade away Sweat and Young, so that opened things up at defensive end, obviously. KJ Henry's starting to get some more snaps because of that. But it's an injury-free team. That's another incredible thing about this. So normally, if you've had your share of injuries, you're forced to play your younger players and look at them. Now it's about an evaluation process for what? Not for Rivera, for whoever replaces him. This is on the question of looking at those young guys.
If you look at it, we got 3 first-year players that playing defensive end for us, and I think with Dre and Harris, I mean, those are 3 young guys that are out there, and they're playing as hard as they can and trying to do what they can, and it is a little bit of an evaluation process for all those young guys.
Yeah, just for them, not for you. So it's a mess, and incredibly, it's a bigger mess with the Jets. We'll get to them next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
And for Tony today, on till noon, Lauren Druhan, 10 o'clock, college football. Oh, there's some things to talk about, obviously. And we'll get to all that at 10 o'clock. And Rick Neuheisel has some thoughts on it, which we'll hear in just a few minutes. But talking about the mess with the Commanders, which is an ongoing story, and it's decades and decades of the same old thing. I'm guessing that Jay Gruden isn't interested in coaching anymore. So he is in the media head first. And he decided that it was a good idea to put out on Twitter Sunday after the Commanders had their embarrassing loss to the Dolphins, quote, 4 to 5 years now, figured culture would have been the difference. Ooh. Like, hey, Ron, you're crowing about the culture that you had to change for me. Looks like you got the same old culture. Well, I don't know. Culture may be better in the locker room, but the results are about the same. This is yet another year that is over in December. It's over. It was over in Thanksgiving. And, gosh, over the last 25, there have just been too damn many like this. Meaningless football in December when everybody else in the league is playing meaningful football. Now, the Jets are kind of in denial. They're 4-7, and they have now started 4 different quarterbacks. In fact, four snaps into the season, their season hit DEFCON 1 with Aaron Rodgers tearing his Achilles and out for the year. So they went with Zach Wilson, and Zach Wilson actually won that game thanks to Josh Allen throwing 3 interceptions. But, okay, they did beat the Buffalo Bills, and there were some signs, okay, maybe Zach Wilson, after a disastrous rookie year, had a chance to regroup, learning from Aaron Rodgers. Nah, he really wasn't getting better. Even Joe Namath decided to light him up, which is really odd. And so now they have gone to Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian, neither one of them having any success. Boyle started against the Dolphins in a 34-13 loss November 17th and was benched for Trevor Siemian, who managed to put up only 8 points in a loss to the Falcons on Sunday. So now it looks like it's going to be Zach Wilson's turn again to be the starting quarterback with Aaron Rodgers not back yet, but still indicating it might happen, and it might happen in that December 24th game where they play Washington. Oh, what a treat that's going to be on Christmas Eve. But it looks like there's a possibility that Robert Saleh, the coach of the team, will turn back to Zach Wilson. Well, Diana Rossini, and she's really good. She works very hard, and I'm sure that she has contacts with a lot of Jets players. She lives in New Jersey. Hell, some of them may be her neighbors, who knows. But she reported in The Athletic that the Jets want Wilson to start again, but that, quote, Wilson is reluctant to stepping back in. She added that Wilson is apprehensive due to perceived injury risk after Aaron Rodgers reached out to advise him to be the starter again. What? You need Aaron Rodgers to advise Zach Wilson to be the starter? Isn't he the one who's got to be saying, ooh, my turn again, coach, put me back in? But Rossini is indicating that he's telling other players, yeah, I really don't want to play again in these games because I might get hurt. Yeah, but don't you want to prove yourself before they release you at the end of the year that you can still play and have somebody sign you, or maybe play well enough that you come back for another year as Aaron Rodgers' backup? Who knows? So Robert Saleh had to address this. If there is a report like this for seemingly the other 31 coaches that your quarterback is reluctant to get another chance to play because he's afraid he's going to get hurt, you wig out on that. You go, what? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. No quarterback would say that, and if he did, he'd be out of here in a second. I could not have a cancerous guy like that around my team. Guy who's on the payroll, doesn't want to play, doesn't want to do his job, doesn't want to help the team. Get out. Listen to how Saleh responds to this report, and it is, it's kind of like he's giving credence to it. This is a couple of minutes from his press conference yesterday.
Well, let's be clear. If he was reluctant to play, guys, he wouldn't be here. All right. I actually coincidentally just got done speaking with him. He came in about a half hour ago, and we had a really good conversation. The young man wants the ball. He wants to start. He believes he's the best quarterback in the room and best quarterback for this team and the guy who gives us the best chance to win. And I'll tell you guys the same thing I told him. I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that he wants to play. I'm just not there yet. Yeah, obviously I'm going to include everybody, but at the same time, I want to make sure nobody is acting emotionally. I want to make sure we're making the right decision for this organization and team moving forward, and making sure that the guy who is best ready to play is on the football field. And we're just trying to find a way to win a football game, and whoever does that, I just want to make sure we cross our T's, dot our I's, and make the best decision possible.
When you spoke to Zach a short time ago, Robert, typically you wouldn't I mean, what was the goal of the conversation? Were you feeling him out about whether he wants to start, or why would you bring him in if you didn't have an answer yet on who the starting quarterback is?
No, he came into me.
Okay.
I didn't call him. He came into me. He wants the ball, and like I told him, I just said I'm not there yet. I still have some process I need to go through.
So you're saying he expressed to you no reluctance whatsoever about playing this week?
I'll never share all my discussions that I have with players. I'm just telling you guys he wants the ball. Empathetically, I'm sure there would be. We had this story last year. And I think it's different. I think last year he truly lost confidence in himself. I think this year, as demonstrated by what I just witnessed a half hour ago, he knows damn well he should be on the football field, and so I think it's different.
Isn't that an admission that last year he did that? Sounds like it. Didn't that sound like that to you, Rex? That he's saying that last year he didn't want to play?
I mean, I don't know if I blame Zach Wilson.
Yeah, but if you're on a football team, you can't do that. You have to be always ready to play.
Heineke did it last year.
Heineke did that in a different way because Heineke knew for sure that he wasn't going to be back.
So does Zach Wilson.
Does he know that for sure? Because he's still under a rookie deal.
He's been benched like 5 times.
He's been benched 5 times, but Aaron Rodgers likes him like a son. And Aaron Rodgers is going to come back and play next year. And if Aaron Rodgers wants him around as a backup, he'll be a backup.
Okay.
So I think it's a little bit different. And yes, I think Heineke was looking to preserve himself for free agency. And also, Heineke was an undrafted free agent who was sleeping on his sister's couch. This was the number 2 pick of the draft. Wow. So I can't believe he's back off of what happened last year. I never heard that. Maybe it was a story that he told people he didn't want to play, but that sounds like Saleh is saying, oh, yeah, last year he didn't want to play, but this year he wants to play, or he wants the ball. And then asked specifically about how his reaction is, wouldn't you say, well, of course he wants to play? Well, I'm not going to share a private conversation. And again, I think Diana Rossini is an outstanding reporter. I think the number of stories that she used to break with ESPN, and that's why she got this big money offer to go to The Athletic, I think she's got something here. You just don't throw this out there as a wild rumor. I think she's got this nailed, and this is what a mess. So, and now you're looking at draft pick position. The Commanders, what are they, 5 now or 4? Let me see. You got the Patriots. They've won 2. You got Carolina's won 1. Arizona's won 3. So what are they, 4 right now? And the Jets are 6. So by the time they meet on Christmas Eve, this could be the Tank Bowl. Not necessarily for the number 1 pick. That's locked up by Chicago, it looks like, with Carolina with only 1 win, and they've already made a coaching change. So they're headed for that. But that pick belongs to the Bears. The Bears right now would have the number 1 pick, and they wouldn't be far behind for 5, 6, whatever. They're 4-8 also. So the Commanders with 9 losses, 4-9. There's only 3 other teams that have more losses. New England has 10, Arizona has 10, Carolina has 11. So. What a mess. All right, College Football Playoff. Rick Neuheisel on with Dan Patrick yesterday, making some very good points that I hadn't heard from other people about how this stacks up for the 4 games. I know there's a lot of whining and complaining about Florida State, and Georgia for that matter. But this is Neuheisel laying it out with Dan Patrick as to what he saw when the brackets were unveiled on Sunday.
I thought exactly what transpired would transpire. I had it right. I said it on the end of our broadcast at the SEC game that I envisioned Louisville winning the game because the 3rd-string quarterback would play for Florida State. Congratulations, Florida State's defense, for playing so brilliantly. But I did think that the SEC's champion would find a way in, and by means that Alabama was in that role, they'd bring Texas with them.
Why did Florida State get left out?
First of all, it's crushing for all of us who coach, knowing what Mike Norvell's going through. I saw his face as he got the news on that screen, and it was, devastating. Can only imagine, because what else do you do other than win all your games? But there's the SEC and the Big Ten. I think Washington, Dan, should be the number one team. I mean, Washington's in the better conference this year. The Pac-12 is a better conference. They beat Oregon twice. Michigan has the Ohio State victory, who's already jettisoned their quarterback. I mean, Michigan's victories, Iowa was 133rd in offense. Michigan State was 128 in offense. Minnesota was 125th. Rutgers was 123rd. Nebraska was 118. Indiana was 101st. East Carolina was 130th, and Bowling Green was 105th. That's their schedule. And they had 1.9 yards per carry against Iowa, less than 5 yards an attempt against Iowa. Washington should be one. And so here's my point. My point is the Big Ten and the SEC are always going to get in because they move the needle television wise. It's nothing that's discussed in the meeting room. I don't think anybody sits there, well, these two are in, but they're in. They have to be in because they can take their ball and go home. I was with Larry Scott when the college football playoff was discussed. And it was adamant amongst many of the commissioners that the 4 teams had to all be conference champions. Yeah. Mike Slive said no. And he was going to say, I'm not in if we don't do it this way. And he wielded that kind of bat. And I don't say it because he's bad. He had that kind of influence and he was taking care of his conference. So Michigan, as the Big Ten champ, has to be where they are. And Alabama, as the SEC champ, has to be in. And by virtue of Texas's victory over Alabama, they're in as well. I would tell you if Georgia would have won that game, it would have been Texas out. Florida State would have been in. I truly believe that.
Okay. Does Georgia have a gripe of not being in the Final Four?
Sure. But there's just no room at the end this time. I mean, they can't get in over Alabama, and they can't get in because Texas beat Alabama. There was no room.
Yeah.
This is just one of those weird years where we've got so many really, really talented teams at the top.
I wonder, maybe it's conspiracy theory, that the playoff committee goes, yeah, Michigan, you're in. Sign-stealing scandal. Your reward is you get Alabama.
Maybe so. Because, again, I thought that Michigan should have been behind Washington. Now, the only metric that they can say Washington's behind Michigan is, game control. Michigan pounded lesser opponents. And I just went through that resume list. By the way, have you ever heard of a team going into a game where the over-under of the first half point total is 1/2? The new fight song at Iowa is "How Low Can You Go?" The Limbo song.
I know.
It's incredible.
I know.
But I do believe that the team that would surprise me most winning it all would be Michigan.
Why?
I think Alabama, because they're the least explosive team of all of them. The other 3 teams have the ability to put up points and make big plays. I don't know that Michigan has that same kind of skill.
We're talking to Rick Neuheisel, former college coach, works for CBS Sports. Will we ever have this level of drama in the playoffs again?
I don't know that this level of drama will exist when we get to 12-13 conversation, because I'll be assuming the champion is coming 4 to 5 to 6. So I don't know that we'll get to this. So if there's a way to go out with drama with the exclamation point, this is probably it.
I think you could go back to when Auburn got screwed, when we had, the
in the BCS.
Yeah, when they went
without
undefeated.
Question.
So we had
without question
3 teams undefeated, and then they got left out, and then that felt like that kick-started, well, you got to have 4 teams in. And now we go to 12, and how long do we stay at 12, in your opinion?
Great question. It will be determined by if we consolidate and bring down Division I to that kind of NFL-esque 48 to 64 teams. It will be determined by that. If we go to that, I would say that we'll eventually be at 16.
That's Rick Neuheisel, former coach in college football, UCLA. I believe he coached at Washington, and he's a very good analyst for Fox. And he's saying that Washington should have been the number 1 seed. Well, I mean, the luster and the attention that Michigan got all year and winning the regular season game of the year, beating Ohio State, I think puts them at the top. But we'll see. And I think he's 100% right that we're going to see Alabama knock off Michigan. I can't see Michigan winning that game. And it kind of reminds me, they used to have the Big Ten champion would always play the Pac-8. So now the Pac-12, which is about to disappear, but it became the Pac-10 and then the Pac-12. But when it was the Pac-8, it was generally won by UCLA or USC. And they would play the Rose Bowl in sunny Pasadena. And you'd have the Big Ten champion going, usually either Michigan or Ohio State. Both of them going through a big, cold grind to get there. And they were run-based teams. Archie Griffin won the Heisman Trophy back-to-back years, 75 and 76. And they would fly out a week ahead to go play in the Rose Bowl, and they'd sit out on the beach, and they would enjoy the sunshine, and they'd say, this is pretty good. Well, the California teams, they were used to that. That was the way they lived. And there were so many years where the Big Ten champ, which came in undefeated and number one, whether it was Michigan or Ohio State, would get knocked off, usually by USC. And they've kept it this year. This is very important for the bowl committee, or whatever the committee is now, the playoff committee. The Rose Bowl carries such weight that they wanted to make sure that it starts at 5 o'clock so you can see the sunset over the mountains. And sure enough, we got the Rose Bowl starting at 5 o'clock on New Year's Day this year with, I think, the sexier of the two matchups. Not that, Texas and Washington aren't well-known teams, especially Texas in the history of college football. But I think if they were doing it for television purposes, you would want the Michigan-Alabama game to be in prime time. You would want to start that at night. The 8:45 game, which is the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans between Washington and Texas, you'd want to flip those two. But the Rose Bowl ain't giving up 5 o'clock on New Year's Day. So that's what we get. We get the marquee match, which is good for me because I'll be very, very sleepy. And I don't know if I'll be able to stay up for the entire Washington-Texas game, but definitely for the Rose Bowl between Michigan and Alabama. And I believe, like Neuheisel says, Alabama just much more explosive, and they will win the game. All right, coming up, Lauren Druhan will join me. We'll get to the college football arguing and hand-wringing about poor old Florida State and the teams that got in, teams that didn't get in, and why isn't Georgia in, and blah, 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 blah. We'll do all that. Plus some baseball. Baseball winter meetings are underway in Nashville. Brandon Hyde, manager of the Orioles, American League Manager of the Year, conversation about where his team is right now. And Mike Elias, the general manager of the Orioles, talks about their hunt for pitching. They have to have a closer this year. Felix Bautista is going to miss the year after Tommy John surgery. And they're also looking for starting pitching. Elias will explain where they're at on that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. Later this hour, the 45th anniversary of Pete Rose becoming the highest paid player in the history of baseball. And when I tell you the salary, it'll blow your mind. We'll get to that at 10:45. Lauren Druhan is with us every Tuesday to talk college football. Loves college football, grew up in the South, is an Auburn fan, and Auburn's kind of in the eye of the storm with all of this. We'll get to that shortly. But I know Lauren to be a very kind person. She was a former fourth-grade teacher. I mean, everybody loves their fourth-grade teacher. You can't be an unkind person to do that. But shortly before the brackets were announced for the college football playoff, she simply said, "Off with the heads of Florida State. I'm sorry, they have to go." Wow, Lauren, I didn't know you had that in you.
I know. Look, the internal struggle that I had leading up to, the big reveal of the playoff was truly the most internal struggle I've probably had ever in my college football fandom. And, to be quite honest with you, Andy, I just, when me and you were going back and forth on Saturday night, I truly did not imagine a world where Georgia was going to be left out of the playoffs. And, I really hate it for Florida State. I do. I mean, those guys put together a great season, and they truly did everything that they could have done. And if I was a Florida State fan, I would be up in flames right now. But I mean, the fact of the matter is they would not be able to hang with any of these teams. And it was just what had to be done. And then the more I started thinking about it after the announcement, I'm like, I think Georgia may be the team that got screwed the most here. Am I wrong for thinking that?
No, I don't think so. But we played something from Rick Neuheisel earlier, and he said, look, there's just no room at the inn. Are they one of the best 4 teams in the country? They probably are. But you had Alabama beating them, and then you had Texas beating Alabama. So you'd have to knock out Texas to put in Georgia, and that would create more problem. Look, ESPN has a story about this, and they quote somebody who was in the committee room, one of the committee members, is saying, all of us had the emotional tie like, holy S, this is going to suck to do this. So, that kind of says it all. There really was no good answer for any of it, right? I mean, when you lay it all out, somebody was going to get hurt in this.
Exactly. And to be honest with you, I think the only solution here was to do an emergency, hey, we're not going to put off the 12-team playoffs till next year. We're just going to do it today, and we're going to figure it out. And it's going to be chaos, but we're going to do it. And I know they can't do that because of TV and all the other things planned. But, gosh, this would have been the absolute perfect first year for a 12-team playoff. And then if that was the case, I think, you pay a little bit more attention to who's 12 and who's 13. Because, right now Oklahoma's 12, and I don't know that you leave LSU out of the extended college football playoff if it is 12. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It is. You're right. It is what had to be done to leave Georgia out. But man,
Yeah.
I just did not see a world where they were out.
Right. Well, I think going into next year, what we'll hear is, well, this is why we had to do this. Did you see what happened last year? Oh, what a disaster. So if it had gone pretty much the way it had the last 9 years, I think there would be more people, kind of opposed to a 12 team, which may eventually get to 16 the way this goes. So I think that this is almost working in their favor that they had the chaos that everybody feared for so long.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this would have been the perfect year. I really, really hope next year is just as competitive this year because, I mean, you would have everything work itself out. If you look from 1 to 12 right now, and like I said, you could make the argument for LSU to be in that 12 spot, but you would have everything figure itself out, and the committee's job would have been a heck of a lot easier this year.
Well, here's what would have happened if we had a 12-team playoff this year. Missouri at Oregon with the winner playing Michigan. Okay, that's all right. Ole Miss against Ohio State, the winner plays Washington. Yeah, okay. Penn State versus Georgia. Do you really think that's going to be a close game? I don't. I think. Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't. I really don't either. I think that and the Florida State with everything that's going on would be the only 2 games where it probably is like, it probably won't be that close. But then again, like I said, if it was an extended playoff, you have the conversation there. Well, if we put Florida State out of the playoffs, what matchups are going to be better? And so I think that's a conversation too.
Yeah.
So I think their work wouldn't have been as, controversial. It would have been more strategic. It would have been, the same amount of work probably this year, but then you have the conversation about strategy instead of, who are we going to completely screw over here?
Well, Florida State in the final matchup would have played Liberty. And, in many ways, that would have been so much worse for Florida State if they lose with a backup quarterback. You mean you lost to Liberty in the playoff? Really? And then the winner of that game gets fed to Alabama, which is probably going to resemble what happened to TCU last year in the championship game. So, for all this, how great the 12-team playoff is going to be, there's going to be some warts on it. And you can see by the way this would have potentially matched up this year.
Oh, I agree. I think there's going to be teams in it where, it's like really, we have to watch this 12-5 matchup every year or whatever. But I do think overall it will elevate the game because I do think the regular season will matter a little more. Right now Florida State's probably thinking, well, why do we play a regular season? And then, you have more human-like teams in the playoffs every year, like an LSU, that's really good. Probably going to have the Heisman winner on their team.
Right.
You have an Oregon team that's played really good all year. Even Ole Miss. I mean, you have these teams that, they look a little human. They're not perfect, but they're really good, and they would have a chance to prove themselves and an expanded playoff. It's not so much as we have to have the perfect season. We have to win a conference championship to be in a playoff. So, yeah, I think it will make the regular season matter a little more. I know a lot of people are arguing, the latter, but I think it's going to make everything mean a little more. So yeah, I'm really excited for it.
It'll mean more for the teams that are further down the line, but it also takes away from what was an incredible SEC championship game, because if it's a 12-team playoff, Georgia and Alabama are both going, right? Both
in. Yeah, you're right. It will take the sting probably out of conference champions a little bit more in that too, and it'll take probably a little sting out of the Ohio State-Michigan matchup because that's always a huge matchup every year, and it's like, okay, well, whoever wins is probably going to make it to the playoff. So it will take a little bit out of those. As far as I can only speak for the SEC, I'm not a huge Michigan or Ohio State fan, but the SEC championship is huge every year. I don't think it'll take anything away from that as far as like the fan bases go. Right. Just like the Iron Bowl, that will never ever be diminished. So it'll take a little bit of skin in the game out of it, but I think it'll still be a good game. I don't think it'll affect the product.
Since you brought up the Iron Bowl, and Lauren Druhan is a lifelong Auburn fan, your team is the reason that we have this mess. If Auburn would have stopped on 4th and 31, both Florida State and Georgia are in.
If we would have rushed 2 more guys, Andy.
Yeah.
If we would have rushed 2 more guys,
right,
none of this would be talked about. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we could have put an end to it. We really could, and that just goes to show Auburn is Auburn. That's how we do. That is how we do. We're so close, and and Alabama beat Georgia. I mean, it was the same score. The Iron Bowl and the SEC championship was the same score.
Yeah.
So it is crazy to think. It just goes to show you how great of a rivalry it is, because Auburn is not a good team this year. Mm-hmm. And to think that the Iron Bowl was the same score as the SEC championship with the number 1 team in the country,
right.
It's just wild. So yeah, I mean, Auburn could have put an end to all of this.
Yeah. Well,
sorry guys.
Here's Auburn now. They're going to go to the Music City Bowl, and they're going to play Maryland. And this, I think, is be very interesting for you, since you've been around both places, you lived here for a while. I think for Auburn fans, it's like, we have to play Maryland in the Music City Bowl. And for Maryland fans, it's like, we're getting Auburn, an SEC team that's won a national championship. This could be a boost for our program. How do you and your fellow Auburn fans feel about facing Maryland in not such a prestigious bowl?
I don't hate it. I mean, you got Talia there. Maryland's not necessarily the best team, but neither are we.
I know.
I think it could be.
But do you accept that? The SEC mentality, that's not you, but it seems like the SEC fan base in general has sort of a snobbish mentality. Like, we're the SEC, and then there's everybody else. No?
Yeah, and I will say for the most part, that is the mentality. Mm-hmm. But for someone that watches more football than just SEC, because Andy, I have these young guys on Facebook all over my post about college football, just going off about SEC, and I'm like, you don't watch anybody but your team, and right. You can tell. So yeah, no, I think it could be a great game. I don't think that we're better than Maryland necessarily. I think it's going to be a good matchup. I worry because I do think it's going to be more of a home game for Auburn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think the Auburn fan base will show up and show out, and it'll be more of a home environment for them. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I think it could be a really good game.
Okay, all right, good. Because I think there's having seen it from all sides, and I lived in Texas, as you know, for 6 years, and at that time the Southwest Conference was the kingpin, and they used to look down their noses at a lot of people. So that's good to hear. You mentioned the Heisman, which is going to be given out on Saturday after the Army-Navy game, and the finalists are Jaden Daniels from LSU, Oregon's Bo Nix, Washington's Michael Penix Jr., and Marvin Harrison of Ohio State, who may be the best player, but generally a quarterback wins. And as you know, Bo Nix is a former Auburn quarterback. How do you view that as a fan, and how do you think the fan base views that? Would you like to see Bo Nix hoist a Heisman since he played at Auburn, or would you not like to see him hoist it because he played at Auburn?
I would, and my husband disagrees with me. He's like, I have never seen a fan base root for a quarterback that left them after 4 years. And honestly, I mean, I don't blame him. I do not blame him for leaving. I want to see him succeed. And he did that. I mean, he did that at Oregon. He had a way better year at Oregon than he ever had at Auburn. But I'll never forget the first game that he ever played. It was an opener against Oregon, actually, at Auburn. And I looked at my husband and I said, Bo Nix could win the Heisman by his senior year. And, you know, I think he's going to win it this year? I really don't think so. But, gosh, he really made a run for it. And given, you know, one more year, I think maybe he could have. But, I mean, he had a really, really great career, and I'm really happy for him. I'd be so happy for him if he won.
Okay. All right. That's a nice outlook. And Jaden Daniels, as we've talked about, he has had some spectacular performances. Your husband, as you say, is a big LSU fan. He's probably going to win, listening to what most of the college football experts are saying, but it's a 3-loss team. And, you know, you got Penix, who's in the playoffs, and Harrison, who could have been there without that loss to Michigan. So, it's I guess it's probably a result of more television and the fact that a guy from a 3-loss team, and the 3-loss team being a high-profile school like LSU, could win it. Because in most years, when you match them up with guys like this, they don't win, the guys with 3 losses.
Right. And I think that this is a perfect example of it's an individual award, not a team award, because, I mean, if you look at it, the steps that Jaden Daniels has had to overcome, like he has played harder teams than Washington has. His stats are above any other player in the conversation stats. So I mean, I think he deserves it. You know, not to say that the other guys don't. I think every other person that is in contention for this award is amazing. I just think Jaden Daniels has played harder teams, harder defenses. His stats are far and above everybody else, and I truly think that if you take him away from this team, you know, LSU does not have the success that they have. They are not putting up, the points that they put up against other teams. So, I mean, you could make that argument for Jordan Travis too, I guess, since they're not in the playoffs because of him. But no. I think Jaden Daniels' stats are just too good to deny at this point.
Yeah, too spectacular and fun to watch. We will have more time to look at these matchups and make picks, but just early glance at this: Michigan and Alabama. Even though Alabama is the 4 seed, I just and I go back to the days of the great speed of the Pac-12 or Pac-8 versus the Big Ten. I just don't think that Michigan can keep up with their speed and explosiveness. What do you think of that matchup?
It's hard this year because of some of the games I've watched Alabama play. It's like, really, this is Alabama? So I don't know. Ultimately it comes down to it's Nick Saban. He's in the playoffs. It's going to be a spectacular game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I do think Alabama handles business at the end of the day, though.
Yeah, so do I. And then Texas against Washington. Texas did beat Alabama, but they did lose to Oklahoma. And Washington has won every game it's played. In fact, Rick Neuheisel was saying he thought they should be the number 1 seed. Do you see Texas with a chance to win?
This is where I go back and forth. I do see Texas with a chance to win, but Washington has been sneaky good all year long. They've done what they need to do. They're 13-0. Some games I watch, I'm like, holy cow, this team is good, especially against Oregon twice. You know what I mean? Like, their team just looks good. I think Texas has a chance, but I don't even want to pick a winner of this because I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot will happen between now and when they play on New Year's Day. But just the first glance at that, it looks to me like a Washington and Alabama final. But we'll see, and we'll talk about it as we get closer. Plus the recap on the Heisman and even the Army-Navy game, and who knows what else pops up. So we'll talk next week. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, that's Lauren Druhan, college football, and you can follow her. I think she's on Twitter, and if she friends you, she's on Facebook, and that's where I saw where she said, forget it. Forget it, Florida State. I don't care you went undefeated. You can't be in. And I after a lot of hand-wringing and what I might do and what I might not do, I probably would have left them out. It's just a sad reality of where they were and what the circumstances were. 45 years ago today, Pete Rose became the highest-paid player in the history of baseball. Wait till you hear the number. Stay with us. Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
And for Tony today, just in, Terry McLaurin named the 2023 Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee from the Commanders. Every team has a nominee, and he is up for the award. He's a tremendous person. I hope he wins. His career here is, it's not bottoming out or anything, but he's not having a great year. And maybe it's not all his fault, but there was a pass in the end zone on Sunday, which he could have caught, did not catch it. DB made a good play on it, but, he's paid to make those kind of catches. And worse is the way they're using him. 3 targets. You got to find a way to get the ball in his hands somehow, some way. And if you're not, trade him because he's got some value. He's got a nice big contract, and he's getting up there for a receiver. He's in his late 20s now. But this season has not gone the way they had hoped it would go, and there are hints that there are some issues with Eric Bieniemy and the play calling. And unlike Terry, because he's very measured in what he said. In fact, can you find that, Rex? Just scroll down a little bit there. I know I put it in yesterday. Terry McLaurin talking about the fact that he had no catches on Sunday and was only targeted 3 times. And sarcasm is not the way that he likes to go. Do you have that yet? Okay, this is Terry McLaurin from Sunday, asked if he was frustrated with no catches and only 3 targets.
Nah, I ran a lot of cardio, so it happens. It comes with it when it's tough. But yeah, it's frustrating. But I'm gonna keep coming in and practicing and playing hard. You know what I mean? As long as I turn on the film and I'm making extra blocks down the field. When I'm trying to clear it out for guys, I'm gonna continue to run my routes hard. So that's what I'm gonna do. At the end of the day, I'm not gonna quit. But yeah, it's frustrating.
Clear it out for other guys. No. You're the alpha guy. They clear out for you. That's what their job is. So that's an indication that there's some issues there. And again, I've listened to just about everything that Terry McLaurin has said to reporters since he came here in 2019. He doesn't go the sarcastic route. So, all right, stay tuned. I don't, the way things seemingly are unfolding, Eric Bieniemy's not going to be here next year anyway. He's part of the Rivera coaching staff, and I think the idea of making him the head coach, that has soured in recent weeks as well, and we still have 4 games to go, 4 games that could be absolute disasters. So, 45 years ago today, Pete Rose became the highest-paid player in the history of baseball. 1976 is when free agency finally reached baseball. Curt Flood lost his case in the Supreme Court, but because they went to a lower court when you had expiring contracts on a couple of players, including Andy Messerschmidt and Dave McNally, it was ruled that players who play out their contracts would become free agents and could sign with other teams. And there were a number of superstars who were reaching that point. One of them was Reggie Jackson. And you remember the A's traded Reggie to the Orioles during the 76 season, and Reggie signed with the Yankees, and that was maybe the greatest free agent signing in the history of baseball. Max Scherzer was pretty damn good, but Reggie led the Yankees to back-to-back World Series and had that unbelievable game in Game 6 where he hit 3 home runs on 3 consecutive pitches off 3 different pitchers. So we get to the start of the upcoming 1979 season, and Pete Rose's contract with the Reds is up. And even though he's 37 years old, he'd had a tremendous year in 1978 with the Reds. He had a 44-game hit streak, and he was still very much in demand. He loved baseball, and great leader. Nobody played harder than Pete Rose. And August Busch, who was the owner of the Cardinals, offered Rose his own beer distributorship. Pirates owner and horse farmer John Galbraith offered racehorses. Ooh, that would have been a disaster with Pete. And then Ewing Kauffman of the Royals offered stock in his pharmaceutical company. Now, couple things here. Rose didn't want to go to an American League team because he wanted all of his hits to be in the National League. He was still a ways away from Ty Cobb's all-time record, but Stan Musial was in reach. So he wanted to certainly become have the most hits in the National League, I'm trying to say here. So he looked at those teams, and he really wasn't interested, even though they offered the most money. He was interested in the Phillies because he looked at them and said, that's a team that can win. Rose is all about winning. So he wound up taking the least amount of money, and it took some extra money from their television station, WPHL, where the executive for the Phillies, Bill Giles, asked them to kick in some money. So they kicked in $200,000 because they knew that the ratings would increase when Rose signed with them. The contract that he agreed to on this date in 1978, 4 years. You want to take a stab at it, Rex, as to how much it was?
Can I guess per year?
Per year, if you'd like, yeah.
Okay. $450K.
No, it was more than that. It was $800,000 a year. But, the next year, Nolan Ryan got $1 million and things have taken off. But, $3.2 million for 4 years and $800,000 a year. The major league minimum right now, the minimum is $740,000. So 45 years ago, he became the highest paid player in baseball history at $800,000 a year. This was an interview that he did in 1982 with the Phillies as he was closing in on Ty Cobb, but was still a ways away. And I think there's great irony in what he says about his situation when he's now, let's see, if he signed with the Phillies when he was 37, this is now 4 years later, so he's now in his 40s and still a productive player for the Phillies. They'd won the World Series 2 years earlier, would make it back in 1983, but this is what he said about his circumstance in 82.
You're trying for Ty Cobb's all-time hit record, and you've already achieved some great records in baseball. Will this record be something special to you that will stand out above the others necessarily?
Well, I think anytime that I really don't think about it, so I'm still 300 hits away, but anytime you can be the most prolific hitter in the history of something that you put 20-some years into and something that's been played for over 115 years, sure, that'd be the biggest achievement that I could ever imagine, becoming the number one hit leader. I thought it was big becoming the number one National League hit leader by passing Stan Musial. Even when you get your name mentioned in the same breath with guys like Musial and Aaron and Cobb and people like that, it just makes all that hard work and hustle and determination and sweat pay off.
When your career is actively over, do you have any designs on coaching or managing, or do you think you'll be able to just walk away to the game you've put so much of your life into?
I would never walk away from the game of baseball because everything I got is because of baseball, and I'm not really worried about that. I think when I'm through as an active player that I'll stay in some capacity, helping youngsters or being a batting instructor or a coach or a manager, but I don't think I'm the type of guy that is going to walk away from baseball because I'm a fan. I'm more than just a player. I'm a fan. I'm a hockey fan. I'm a basketball fan. I'm a football fan, and I know most there is to know about baseball. And so if I might as well work at the ballpark because I'm going to go every night anyway as a fan just to watch the games. I mean, I get a kick out of sitting and watching the game. And when I'm in there, when we're on offense, I haven't ever been a bench warmer. I've never been a non-regular in 20 years. So. But I get a kick out of just being a fan and watching the games on TV and things like that. And I don't think I'll ever just get away from baseball because I understand it and I can carry on a conversation and make sense about baseball because I know a little bit about it. There's, you could talk about the stock market maybe better than I, but I could talk about baseball and carry on a sensible conversation with you.
You could also talk about betting, which ultimately did him in. Now, he became a free agent again after the 83 season. The only real offer he got was from Montreal. He went there in 84, but even though he became the first player to have 4,000 hits in the National League, he wound up breaking the record with the Reds the following year. They traded him back at the deadline. He went to the Reds and became a player manager there. In 1985, broke Ty Cobb's record. 1986, he played 72 games and retired after the 86 season. And then in 1989, he got popped for gambling on baseball, for betting on baseball. And, the rest is history, where he was banned first he was banned for life from baseball because he wouldn't accept a plea deal. He could have admitted guilt and been back in baseball in a year, but did not. And then the commissioner, Bart Giamatti, who had suspended him, he died. Fay Vincent took over. He never admitted that he bet on baseball. He lied about it for 20 years. Finally, when he was in his last season of eligibility on the ballot, and he wasn't eligible because he was banned from baseball, the Hall of Fame had passed a rule that anybody banned would not be eligible for voted into the Hall of Fame. Then he wrote a book, and he said, oh, yeah, I lied, and it was too late. And the ironic thing about what he said at his press conference when he was signed on this day in 1978 to that $3.2 million contract, I had so many good offers from so many good teams that I didn't know what direction to turn in. Now I probably have enough money so I don't have to worry about getting into debt. And, he was later jailed for income tax evasion and, of course, the gambling thing, which has kept him out of baseball for all these years. There was even when they brought him back in Philadelphia to celebrate what would have been, I guess, the 40th anniversary of their World Series team, that there was an allegation of sexual harassment, that he had done a rape with a former employee of the team, which overshadowed a lot of the celebration that took place. I mean, if you look at the career of Pete Rose, and it's fascinating, there are so many twists and turns to it, and we get into this debate all the time because, there are some people who are baseball voters who want to see Bonds and Clemens and A-Rod and people like that put in the Hall of Fame, even though they're tinged with steroids. There are people who also look at Pete Rose and they say, well, look at where we are now, where, DraftKings and all these other operations are involved with baseball. Baseball's completely in bed with gambling. And here's a guy who bet on baseball. He broke the cardinal rule. He broke the rule that's in every clubhouse. You cannot bet on the games. And he did that. And first he said he only did it when he was the manager of the Reds. Then they found betting slips that said he did it as a player. He was a stone-cold gambler. And he used to do a radio show with a friend of mine named Steve Fredericks in Philadelphia. And Fredericks said all he wanted to know was the lines on the games. He was constantly betting on football games when he did that. Ay.